here we are again, and we'd have somebody open us in prayer tonight. We'll get started in Arnold and Troy, somewhere in the neighborhood of page 83.
I'll do it.
All right, thanks.
Heavenly glorious Father, Lord, your blessings surround us daily, and thank you so much for each of these, Lord, the families that we have, the friends, the colleagues, and peers at school, Lord, and the means to come to school and provide for the various family in our lives. Lord, thank you for this class tonight. I pray that we as students are attentive and listen to the teachings of Professor Stanley. I pray that we take these home and Lord, don't let them sit for a week, but rather that we engage and interact with the work that he's done in providing teaching for us daily. I pray you encourage Dr. Stanley through the week for the next lesson, and that we grow and we're all able to put this to use in a way that would bring you honor, and there's something we pray, man.
Amen. Thank you. All right, verbal sequences. I apologize for my voice. I've been losing it lately. I mean, just my voice.
You were yelling, cheering for the motivational speaker.
Yeah, that must have been part of it. Must have been the football game Saturday. But in any case, page 83, verbal sequences. We're familiar with the conjunction vowel, and the conjunction vowel can be used in a variety of ways. Here, the conjunction can be affixed to the front of a verbal form, and so we cover it under verbal sequences. So, page 84, the imperfect plus the vowel consecutive, and of course there are various ways for one to refer to the imperfect plus the vowel. We call it in our parsing preterite because it's short and easy. We know what we're talking about. So when we get an imperfect form with the vowel consecutive or vowel conversive or whatever you want to call it, we call it a preterite. So there are several ways that the imperfect with vowel consecutive can be used. This is, I think, fairly straightforward, although, well, he says that the vowel plus the imperfect gives it the same aspect as the perfect, and you might argue the same tense as the perfect as well. It seems to me that the preterite or the imperfect plus vowel consecutive is well suited for describing action in the past time. It isn't always necessarily, but it's well suited for that. So one use of this form is labeled sequential. It expresses temporal sequence describing an action or situation subsequent to a previous action or situation. So now the man knew his wife Eve, and she conceived, and then bore Cain. And so you can see the succession of time in that example. The next use of the preterite is labeled in our book the consequential, and as the name would indicate, it expresses logical result, describing an action or situation resulting from a previous action or situation. So Yahweh was with Joseph and he became a successful man. So those aren't really just disjointed thoughts. One follows from the other. And time sequence really isn't the point. Now the point is that because Yahweh was with Joseph, he became a successful man.
Would that be the same thing as an apodictic sentence or phrase?
No, I don't think so. But it seems similar. Some of the categories seem very similar, don't they? Sometimes it's hard to separate some of the categories. And really, it's useful. I mean, you know why labels are useful. I mean, how do you talk about something without labels? And yet it's not so important that you have a set of labels down, but that you, by being exposed to the possibilities, can look at a text and say, well, this is what's happening This is what these words are trying to get across. And sometimes when you create categories, there's an awful lot of overlap in the category. If you get too much overlap, you might question the validity of the label or the category. All right. C, narratival. Due to the frequency of its use, the evolved consecutive plus imperfect came to be used on its own, independent of a preceding verbal clause, in order to begin a narrative sequence or a new section of narrative. So, and you see this all the time in narrative. And Yahweh appeared, and it came about. He translates it, now Yahweh appeared to him, which is a perfectly legitimate way to do it. All right, the exegetical use clarifies, expands, or paraphrases the clause that precedes it. The simple conjunctive vowel may be used on nouns to perform a similar function. We'll see that later. Truly, I am a widow, and my husband has died. So, in that case, it's almost a way of saying the same thing in different words. She called his name Moses, saying, because I drew him out of the water. And in a sense, it gives you the reason, one for the other. Why am I a widow? Because my husband died. At least sometimes that's the case. All right, so the exegetical use of the preterite. And then there's a dependent use of the preterite following temporal clauses. The vayikol pattern will present an action or situation that is dependent on the temporal clause. So, in the year of King Uzziah's death, I saw the Lord. You wonder in that case if it isn't used to make it clear that it's in the past. In any case, when they were in the field, Cain rose up against Abel, his brother. All right, so those are the uses of the vowel with the imperfect. Now we get the perfect plus the vowel consecutive, sometimes referred to as a reversing vowel. And the category that you mentioned, the apodictic, is in this. It's a category of the perfect. So we'll get to it in a minute. Sequential, again, expresses temporal sequence just like the other one. But may be talking about something that is in the future. So what does the vowel do on a perfect? Well, it gives it the same tense and aspect as the imperfect. And it's often used for something in the future. So Yahweh has torn the kingdom of Israel from you today, and He has given it to your neighbor. Well, He translates that in the past. I suppose you could translate that as in the future as well. He says in the next example, on the day I punish, I will punish them for their sin. All right, next is consequential. So some of these categories are similar, aren't they? Expresses logical results rather than action or situation resulting from a previous action or situation. I am Yahweh, and I will bring you out. So it is of the nature of Yahweh to do something like bring His people out of slavery. The people of Israel were fruitful and increased greatly and multiplied and became exceedingly mighty, so that the land was filled with them. So, consequential. One results from the other. Volitional expresses a command or wish. And since the reversing vowel is suited to the idea of the future tense, we see this use of the future in Greek. We see this use of the future in English. More of a command sort of thing. You will clean your room. What that means, that's kind of in the future, but it really is an imperative sort of idea, isn't it? Maybe even a strong imperative. So, you will love the stranger. You will bind them as a sign on your hand. The future in sort of an imperatival Wait, but sometimes it's not as strong as an imperative or a strong imperative. Last paragraph in that section, page 89. Frequently, the idea of succession can be nuanced to express purpose or result. Let us go up at once, and so let us possess it. And just as we have seen in imperatival ideas, sometimes you can use an imperative as something softer than an imperative to express a wish or a desire or something like that, and that idea carries over in this.
Like when David in Psalms charges God with an imperative.
Mm-hmm. Or when we say, give us this day our daily bread, that's an imperative, but we're not commanding God. That's an entreaty.
So Joseph is like that. That's a third person, right? Joseph is a wish or a desire.
Yes.
But this is in the second person, so...
Well, there are various ways to show volition. And, you have the cohortative in the first person, Jesse, third, and this for second person. All right, now we come to when you mentioned the apodictic. And here this is the use of it in a conditional sentence, and it expresses a logical result describing an action or situation resulting from a previous action or situation. So this is a little bit different than the other one because this is more used in a conditional sentence. The if part of a conditional sentence is called the protasis. Well, it normally comes first, it doesn't have to, but if you will do this, then the then part is called the apodosis.
It's like APO, positive, doesn't look out, just... APODISIS, I think. Okay.
And the protasis.
And the if part is a protasis or an apodictic?
Yeah, well, pro means it comes before.
Okay.
And pro-tasso needs to be ordered before. So the reason I call it apodictic is because it becomes the part of the apodosis. How do you spell apodosis? It's probably APODASOS. It's on what, page 90?
It's quite often.
This is yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, he spells it the apodosis. It's not even spelled right. So the word the letter that I'm not sure of is actually left out of that word. How can you see a word misspelled in the book?
It's spelled apodosis here, right? APODOSIS.
Is that how they spell it? Well, where I saw it in the second paragraph, third line down, it ends the line and there's a...
Oh, yeah, okay.
I missed it there.
Oh, yeah, apodosis. It's an O. I was guessing I or A, so it's an O. And probably because it comes from doso, or didomi in Greek. Do, aorist form, doso, future form.
Maybe. Awesome.
Yeah. So, but anyway, it's the then part of an if sentence. Excuse me. It's amazing what comes back to you. Sneezing and colds. Sometimes you wish language stuff would come back to you as well. All right. Any questions on those so far? You can see some of the examples like on page 91. There isn't literally the word if. Is there not a prophet of Yahweh here so that we may inquire of him? And it's kind of implied, if there were a prophet of Yahweh here, then we would be able to inquire of him.
So that's interesting. Conditional sentence, if then, a conditional question, is so, could be, is same thing.
All right, then on page 91, commands and verbal sequences. As noted, the perfect plus vowel consecutive may express volition. Biblical Hebrew may also use the vowel conjunctive with imperfects and volatives. the times perfects to express sequential commands which may connote succession of purpose. So succession shows an action that temporarily follows the main verb. May my Lord not be angry, and I shall speak. Ask your young men, and they will tell you. All right, and then purpose. Express purpose or motivation behind the main verb. Bring it to me so that I may eat. Bring it to me and I will eat. Purpose is fairly obvious there. All right, interruptions in verbal sequence. The vowel conjunctive employed with a verbal idea is also used in narrative text to present an idea that is strongly disjunctive from the vowel consecutives in context. This disjunction occurs with both perfect and imperfect verbs, but typically the vowel conjunctive is not prefixed onto the verbal form, but an associated noun. That is either the subject or the object of the noun. So the non-successive idea presented by the vowel conjunctive can express several nuances. So the vowel conjunctive in the distinct subject points to a seemingly successive action performed by a different subject. So for example, Moses stretched his staff to the heavens, and Yahweh sent thunder and rain. So there's a connection between the two actions. One is seen as a result of the other, somehow connected to the other. But the two actions are not done by the same individual. So here there's an and Yahweh. So you really have two clauses at that point. All right, so that's distinct subject. Simultaneous action. The vowel conjunctive expresses an action that is not successive but simultaneous to the main verb. God called the light day, and He called the darkness light. Well, I'm not sure why you think there's not time succession there, because it does take a moment to call the light day, but I guess you would say essentially at the same time He did those things. Samuel went to Ramah, and Saul went up to his house at Gibeah of Saul. So they will kill me, but they will let you live. So simultaneous action. They can kill me, but they can't eat me. That's part of pastoral theology, I guess. It's a different subject, I suppose. All right, and then anterior action. The vowel conjunctive signals an action or situation that is out of chronological order in the narrative flow and is equivalent to the English pluperfect or present perfect in narratives of past time. On occasion, parenthetical remarks within a narrative will be presented in this manner. So, one example. Laban went into Jacob's tent, and into Leah's tent, and into the tent of the two maidservants, but he did not find them. He came out of Leah's tent and went into Rachel's tent, but Rachel had taken the household items. So this is all the stuff that Laban did, and then all of a sudden something Rachel did, which is not in the sequence of what happened before. Samuel was dead, and all Israel mourned for him, and they buried him in Ramah, his city. And Saul had expelled the mediums and the spiritists from the land. So that's kind of just almost random. All right, so any questions about that? That's fairly straightforward, really, isn't it?
I kind of wish there was a workbook like the one for the basic biblical Hebrew, because that workbook was pretty good. Mm-hmm. And it helps. That would help, when they give you examples, you can kind of follow it, but I'd like to see it. I'd like to be able to apply it.
Well, that's what we're going to do tonight, actually, in a big way. We're going to try to spend a lot of time tonight as we go through our translation. Now that we're a little ways into the book, and say, okay, what is this? Let's look at it. How does this all work? So we're actually going to try to do some of that. Maybe not in a way as slick as a workbook, but in the text that we're reading. And so maybe that just thrusts us right into regular exegetical stuff now. With the real thing. The real Bible. But yeah, that's a good point. So we're going to work on that tonight. So since we're going to work on that tonight, Let us turn in our Bible. I wonder if we should do Joshua first or the Psalm first. Maybe we should try the hard one first, huh? While we're still awake tonight. Which one was the hard one? Excuse me. Alright, let's try this. Let's do the Psalm first now. See how it goes. I still like Benigi note. Here we have Lamna Seach El Han Chilot Mizmor LaDavid.